How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be fixing a rather significant issue I have with my S10 here. So if you remember a few videos back, I got the S10 running, took it for a drive, and everything was great. I then started to just put some miles on the truck just to get a feel for it, work out any bugs, and a big issue that I noticed is that when you really stomp on the loud pedal, the engine will go really lean. I couldn't figure it out for a little bit, but luckily the Holley computer has a fuel screen on it. So what I did was I brought up the fuel screen and I watched it as I would accelerate under a hard load. And what was happening was the air-fuel ratio, it would go really lean, and as I saw that, it was putting a lot of fuel to the injectors. So what that told me was that the computer knows that the engine is going lean and it's trying to put fuel into it, but it's still ending up lean. So what I think is happening is the fuel pump, the stock fuel pump in this truck, doesn't have enough flow to be able to support the engine I put into it. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to replace that stock fuel pump with a new upgraded fuel pump from Holley. To do that, I have two options. I can either drop the tank out or I can take the bed off. Dropping the tank out is kind of a pain and you really need a lift to do it. I don't have a lift in my shop, so I'm opting with the take the bed off option. While I'm doing that, I can also I've got a fuel pressurization issue where my tank is becoming over pressurized when I drive it. So I think that's just a simple vent line I can hook up, and I can also clean up some of the routing I did on the fuel return when I was having the issue of the fuel dumping out of the charcoal canister when I still had that on. So hopefully I'll get all those issues resolved in this video. We can take it out and hopefully I won't have any more lean issues. So let's get to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the bumper off, because my plan is to use my engine hoist to lift the bed up and then roll the truck out. And to do that, the bumper has to come off. And since I live in the Northeast, impact because of rust, safety glasses, because I'll probably be taking a rust shower doing all this. Now I'm taking the brackets off the frame because that's going to be much easier than trying to get the bolts from the bumper to the brackets off. So just trying to make it simple on myself. All right, so I already unhooked the light bulbs. So I should be able to, now with this drop down, I should be able to get to these bolts from the outside and just pull the bumper right off. And of course, solid steel, and it's very heavy. This is what it'd be nice if I didn't work by myself. There you have it. Easy peasy. So now all I have to do is unhook the lights, which is that connector right there that comes out. This other connector, just a spare, is into the frame with a clip, so just undo the clip and that comes off. Same thing over here. There's another connector over here. And then I just need to take that ground strap off. And then we can move on to the second step. All right, so I got my wires unhooked. So now move on to step 2, and that's taking the bolts that hold the bed to the frame off. So you see them, there's one there, there's 8 of them down the side, or 6, I can't quite remember. 8 or 6 down the side. Take those off, and then the last thing to do is unhook the fuel filler neck from the side of the bed. So I do those 2 things, and we'll be able to lift this bed right off, hopefully, and just roll the truck out from underneath and have easy, quick access to the gas tank right there. When you work alone like I do, sometimes you have to get creative in the manner that you do things. And well, yeah, I'd say that's pretty creative. So I work by myself, don't have anyone else to help me lift this up. So what you have right there are ratchet straps, engine hoist that doesn't go in all the way because it's too wide for my truck axle, and we're gonna give this a shot anyway. It theoretically will work. Hopefully it works. I hope it doesn't fall and hurt me, but here we go. The key is I don't want this rotating and hitting the cap. That would be bad. So far, it appears we are okay. So, up we go. ratchet straps are really tight. I got a hose zip tied to the bottom of the bed. Not remember I did that. It should be fine. Let's see if we can get a little forward. All right, that went pretty well. That's about as forward as I need it. So you can see now I can get to the fuel tank really easy. I can fix this. So this was where it went into the canister and out of the canister, and oh good, I broke that. So I gotta either plug that. I gotta figure out what I gotta do with that now that I broke it. That's unfortunate. But fix that, and then I can get my new fuel pump in there. So maybe I'll be buying going to U-Pull or getting a new pump. Or maybe I can figure something out to fix that up. Yeah, I'll figure it out. So yeah, you can tell that was, even though I broke something, that was much easier than trying to pull the tank down itself. Pulling the tank, dropping the tank would have been horribly inconvenient. So I'm gonna think about this for a little bit and see what I gotta do, and I'll get to pulling out that pump there and we can replace it. All right, so this is the new pump I have. It's an AEM pump I got off of Holly's website. It's a high flow performance pump. It's an in-tank design pump, so it's meant to go inside the tank like the pump I'm taking out. It's rated at 40 psi and I think 130 liters of flow. So it comes with a pre-filter, a bit of hose, a cap, and an isolator for it, another foam isolator for the pump itself. So there you go, got the pump right there. Couple hose clamps, new wiring harness if you need it, and I believe these are the flow/instructions. So what I need to do now is I need to disassemble this, get the old pump out, and see how I need to modify my existing housing for this pump to accept this new pump. What I'm concerned about is I've read that there's a backflow prevention feature or something like this. I think it has something to do with this black hose inside this pump. So I need to determine what I need to keep, what I can get rid of to make this new pump slide inside and get this pump to work. So I'm going to disassemble this and then see what I have here. All right, so I got my fuel pump apart. Now, a couple things that I wanted to talk about. So you'll notice on this little piece, there's this little clip here, and you might think, oh, I'll just pull that clip and it'll pull the pump right out. That is not the case, because the filter is firmly attached to the bottom. So what you will then need to do is you'll need to pull up on these little tabs. You can see they've got these little spring pieces of plastic, and those slide in on those little grooves on there. So that took me quite a bit of time to pull on that. Just used a good old pair of needle nose pliers here to be able to pull that out, and it took some time. So I'm about ready to pull this out, and I'm looking at it, and I did some reading, and someone somewhere, I forget, in one of the blogs said there's a little check valve in there, and you can see that little red thing way down there. That's a check valve, and part of the pump here, this little hose, was connected to the outside of the check valve right there. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to pull that off, because my guess would be that the pump generates pressure to open that check valve and kind of let the fuel move in. And if you don't get rid of that, you won't get fuel into your little canister here unless it sloshes over the top. That's just my guess, but based on what I read, you know, I didn't understand it when I read it, but now that I pulled it apart, I can see what they mean. And it would make sense that this pump is somehow pressurizing that check valve to force the fuel into the system, because the other pre-filter, this pre-filter, sat on the bottom there. So that's just on the inside of this check valve, and you can see there's a little valve there. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I think I'm just going to take that out because I don't need it. Now what I need to do is figure out, am I going to put this pump inside this housing, put the housing back in? Where is my other pre-filter going to go? And how am I going to plumb all of this back together in a sense that works? I'm also going to have to put a different connector on, because you can see these two connectors clearly are not compatible. So, yeah, not compatible. So that's where I'm at right now. I got a little more figuring to do, and then I will get back to it. All right, so I finished putting my pump back together for the most part. I want to show you what I did. So the first thing I want to show you is this little valve that I was telling you about earlier. So what this does is, you probably can't see, but there's a little tiny hole in the end of that. So the pump would pump fuel down into this little angle here, and it would spray a really, I'm guessing a high pressure mist of fuel, and that would hit this little flapper check valve to keep the valve open, is my guess. It's what it seems like it was doing, because it was pointing right at this little valve here. So what I ended up doing is, I have my new fuel pump. I've got a little foam piece inside of there that came with the pump. So I stuck my new pump inside the old carrier for my old pump. And the reason I did that is I had no other better way to really secure the pump into the housing there. I was really struggling to come up with something. So I decided the best thing to do was going to be to put it back in its old carrier. I've got the filter on the bottom here. That worked out well. There was enough space in the bottom to get my filter on. There's enough space to a little cooling hole so you can't see it. But I think there's a passageway. You can see that hole up top, and that draws fuel through to keep this pump nice and cool. So I've got it hooked up to the existing supply line, so that should be fine. I'm not increasing pressure on this pump, just flow. This is the return line. I put on the new connector that goes with this pump, wired it right up to the old wires, so that should be good. And now I'm just going to put this whole assembly back together, trim up this little piece on the fuel rail return so that I can put a clamp on that. And then to solve my over pressurization of the tank, I think what I'm going to do is remove this emissions pressure sensor and somehow put a hose from that just going to the atmosphere, so that it can vent, so the tank can vent properly, because currently it's not. Or I may just, I got to figure out what I'm going to do for that, because it's not going to be the easiest setup, but there won't be a lot of fuel coming up there. So anyway, that's what I got going for the fuel pump. I'm going to wrap this all up, put it back together, and then put it back in the tank, and that should be it. I should be able to drop the bed on and take this for a test drive, and we'll see if it actually works. So I'll save you guys the trouble of me putting all this back together. You saw me take it apart, so the next you'll see is we'll be taking this thing for a drive. So I did get my S10 back together. I got the bed on, started up with the new fuel pump for the first time. No dramas with that at all. Then I took it out for a drive. I had a few little issues when I was taking it for a drive, in that it would sometimes cut out on fuel, and I think that's because the Holly computer had to relearn the fuel map with the new fuel flow from the higher output pump compared to the original pump. So that took a little bit of driving around. It straightened itself out then. It was running great, and I was going to video showing how the air fuel ratio was then perfect, right where I wanted it to, and I broke it. I was out driving it, laid into it a little too hard, and the transmission cross member actually cracked on one of the welds that I had made, and it just, the transmission is just kind of sitting in there kind of on its side. So I do need to fix that now. That's going to become a high priority, because I would like to get that fixed before the weather starts getting too cold. So stay tuned for that next video. I will show my design, my original design for the transmission cross member, and then what I'm going to do to make a better, improved design moving forward. That's going to eliminate a lot of the welds that I had put in there, a lot of the weak points that I put into my original design. So stay tuned for that. That will be on an upcoming episode. I hope you guys enjoy this video and it can help you with one of your builds for an in-tank fuel pump replacement. If you did like the video, please remember to like and subscribe below, and I'll see you on the next build.